can we feign excitement for the Four Nations?
No.
I have not.
I'm not going to fake it.
I have not heard a single person that I respect in the hockey world fairly or truthfully say how excited they are for this tournament. And it seems like players have been dropping like flies. We know that Quinn Hughes will not be in the lineup for the U.S. There is a question, or at least as of Friday, I was listening to Jeff Merrick's podcast on the way in, that Crosby might miss the first game, but it wants to play. Rasmus Ristolainen, if you're looking for the Philly angle here, Risto is not going to play.
Yeah.
Which I don't know. I mean, we can have a conversation here about concern or not. It was thought that Risto's injury was very minor.
It is a minor injury.
But then, usually hockey players, Bundy, you could probably give us a little bit of insight here, but typically when a player has the opportunity to represent their country, they do typically play through small injuries, I think. Is it because it's the Four Nations and not the Olympics?
Yeah.
Is it like, where would you land there if you had as Ant calls it, a minor injury?
If I had a hangnail, I wouldn't play.
Get out.
I swear to God.
Because it's Four Nations?
Yeah, but I mean, it doesn't even, like I told you before, I said 3 months ago, you have got to get more than just an attaboy for winning. Like, attaboy, you guys won the Four Nations with like 4 other nations that aren't even there, that comprise the makeup of the National Hockey League. So I'm just telling you, like, it feels almost like it's an all-star. I think the way it's been treated leading into it now with guys dropping and like these kind of like injuries, like we're not tweaking it. I'm just saying to myself, like, what's the point? Like, what do you win out of it? It's nice. I've represented my country before. It's a great honor. It really is. And I don't mean it like that. But I'm saying there's nothing beyond just getting a little pat on the back for winning it and saying that's what you get. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit too hard, but I've not heard one person really come out and say this is going to be just a dynamite tournament. It's unbelievable for the game. How do we continue to sell this? No, I'm not hearing that at all. I'm hearing like, okay, let's get this over with so guys can resume the extremely busy schedule they have in March and April.
Yeah, what people fail to, when I should say people fail to recognize, because some people probably do recognize, but what people need to realize here is this is a completely PR move by the National Hockey League and the National Hockey League Players Association. This is not an international tournament by any stretch of the imagination. It's not even being recognized by IIHF. Not that they are a super body to,
right.
But whatever. I mean, their rules don't apply most of the time. I mean, when guys you can't compete in international ice hockey competition. Okay, great. Like, people don't really care, right? What they say. But the reality of it is this is just a function of the league, and it's being used to replace the All-Star game this year.
Yep.
And that's all it is. And so the idea of shutting down your league for 2 weeks for an exhibition tournament where the best players in the league are playing, but they're expected to play hard, unlike an all-star game where they could well get hurt and then impact your league's finish, is mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, I agree.
Completely mind-boggling.
All right, so let me kind of rip up the format of the show here for a second, because I'll propose this to you guys. So, Bundy, you said, you don't want to just go play for an attaboy. To me, this is, while it replaces the All-Star game, there's part of me that goes, the NHL looked at what the NBA did with the in-season tournament, and while it was mostly panned last year, there was something about the final few rounds, and a lot of that is because there was a financial incentive. So in the NBA in-season tournament, teams that qualify for the quarterfinals get a $50,000 bonus per player. When you make it to the semifinal, it's $100,000 per player. And if you win the NBA Cup, each player gets a $200,000 bonus. Should the Four Nations Cup, should that have included some kind of a financial bonus? It can't be that high. There's more players, but I don't know. If it is, like, it's not even a thing.
Like I said, I'm sure for the players
in a meaningful way.
I mean, guys are like, starting to kind of reconsider if they have an injury and they're kind of dropping out of it now. I don't know what would be in it. I mean, there has to be some financial incentive to the players. I don't know that though, but I'm just guessing.
I'm gonna look, because I don't think there is.
Yeah, well then it's for the love of the game then.
For the love of the game.
And that's the part where Anthony's saying, like, could you imagine Edmonton having a guy like McDavid, like where their fortunes hinge upon a guy like Connor McDavid staying healthy, being healthy down the stretch, being at his best, and going to this thing, and even if he got a minor injury by accident, that's the end of the Edmonton Oilers season because of this tournament.
Yeah.
Would the NHL have been better off? I don't like the idea, and I don't like the NBA Cup. Big basketball fan, but I don't like the NBA Cup. But would the NHL have been better off trying to devise a plan that was similar? Like if the idea here is like the money grab and trying to add additional onus on the importance of like going after those regular season points, would it have made sense for the NHL to look at some version of an in-season tournament?
I don't think so, because the one thing I could say is when you compare hockey to basketball, international competition in hockey matters, right? Like I'm not saying it doesn't matter in basketball, but the NBA is bigger than international basketball.
Correct.
International hockey, though, when you're playing best on best, country versus country, and it means something, whether it's the World Championships or the Olympics or even the World Cup, which they used to do every 4 years or whatever.
We'll talk about that in a second, because I was talking to some guys the other day that played in that.
Yeah.
And at that alumni game last week.
Yeah.
They think that's, if the NHL is going to do it, that's the model to do it.
Correct.
Because the star players, they don't really compete in training camp anyway. Like, they're going through the motions in an exhibition game.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do that, it kind of brings people into the, sorry for cutting you off.
No, it's fine.
Brings people into the spirit of the hockey season to start then.
Yes.
It chops a little bit out of baseball and football, right? So they get like the World Cup. So if you put 6 teams in it, let's say there's 6 teams, or you figure whatever it is, even if you get to 8 teams, you do it for that 2 weeks in early September, and that kind of launches your NHL season. There was a lot of excitement about that. That was probably some of the best international hockey that I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, like if you're doing that, then that matters to the hockey community.
Yes.
Right? But doing it like this, where it's half-assed, it's only 4 countries, and that there's no reward for it.
Right.
It's just a PR grab. And I think the players, even though the PA signed off on this, I think the players recognize it. It's like, well, shit, our teammates are off on the islands having a nice vacation in the middle of the season, and we have to play in this exhibition tournament to make the league happy. Like, if you have an opportunity to get out of it with a minor injury, you get out of it with a minor injury. I'm just saying, right? I mean, that's kind of the idea. So, like, I think that's where the NHL gets it wrong. And the comparison what Bundy was talking about with the World Cup, one that really works is World Baseball Classic. Yeah. Like, that does really well in March. Now, I know pitchers aren't up to speed really at that point, and so you got to use a ton of pitchers because the starters can only really go like 3 innings at that juncture. But the reality of it is that was some. Look at the excitement that caused when you had USA versus Japan in the championship, and everybody was watching Ohtani versus Trout. Like, at the end, like, that was the big thing, and everybody wanted to pay attention to it. That's good for the sport, and those players are trying to win that for their country. That's what having a tournament like this at the start of the NHL season would do to vault into the season, as opposed to breaking it up in February.
Can I pitch a psychotic idea?
Sure,
but it's one that I love. Okay. One thing that I think soccer does really well is club tournaments, the idea of the Champions League, that you get qualifiers, the top finishers in the EPL, Serie A, Bundesliga, La Liga, etc., right? They all play the best club teams against one another. Now, that is sprinkled throughout the season. It's spread out, kind of mitigates the risk of guys not being fully in form, fully healthy. You don't run the risk of as much of a significant injury because the guy's not loosened up or whatever. Could you ever foresee a scenario where the NHL, the KHL, and a few other leagues in the world, maybe run by the governing body of IIHF, says, yeah, you know what, like, why don't we do a tournament throughout the season? And we say, like, the top 2 teams in each conference, the KHL gets a certain number of qualifiers, and they run a tournament either throughout the season, or they do pick a time within the regular season where they say, all right, let's figure out who the best team in the world is. Or is it something where, like, the NHL doesn't want to run the risk of their team not being the best? The KHL, same thing. Do you think it's just
no? I think it's more than that.
Too much.
I think it's more than that.
Okay.
I think that these players, you're paying them top dollar. Well, for the sport of hockey, obviously not compared to other sports, but you're paying them top dollar. You don't want them getting hurt in a tournament against other leagues. Could I see that being a potential after the season? Replacing the world, like, there's that World Championships, right?
Yeah, it's a huge deal to the Euros and the Russians. It's a massive deal.
But what I'm saying is that maybe could I see that and say, okay, we're going to have the best teams from all these different leagues play each other in June in a world championship instead of, but not in season. Like the NHL
No.
would never let the season be broken up to play teams from the KHL or the Swiss League or whatever. I mean, you're not going to, it's the NHL teams are going to win all the time anyway.
Yeah.
The best players are playing here. Like,
I mean, there is a chance of an upset at some point.
Well, I remember
I don't know.
Flyers
They're-
went over and like lost to that team in Europe a few years ago when they played before the regular season
they
started.
tied, didn't they? Or was
They lost.
did they lose that
yeah,
game?
They lost.
That was in Switzerland, right?
It was in Switzerland.
Lugano.
Yeah, Lugano.
Lugano, right?
No, that's
Whatever.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. There's just part of me that thinks like anytime a league is an international league, right? And you can make it a case in basketball, but especially with hockey, like there are so many good nations. To me, it's always like felt like a missed opportunity that they don't have something like that at the club level. I get the international level, get the idea of playing for your country. That's something totally different. It's interesting.